There's a place on Earth where death doesn't rot, where bodies don't decay. They sink, and they're devoured by things that have been waiting in the dark for years. A place where evolution didn't just take a different path, it abandoned the rule book entirely. We're talking about the deep ocean. Not the water you see on documentaries with dolphins and coral reefs. We're talking about the abyss. The zone that begins where sunlight dies, where the pressure would crush your skull like a paper cup, where the temperature hovers just above freezing, where nothing should survive, and yet it does. But here's what keeps scientists awake at night. The creatures down there don't just survive. They've evolved into something that shouldn't exist. They've developed abilities that violate our understanding of biology.
Bodies that defy physics, lifespans that mock mortality itself. And the deeper we go, the more we realize we don't know what's down there. We've mapped more of Mars than our own ocean floor. So the question isn't what lives in the deep sea. The question is, what did the deep sea turn them into?
Let's start with something simple, something we all learned in school. Evolution is about survival of the fittest. Animals adapt to their environment. The strong survive, the weak don't. Natural selection. Darwin, we get it. That's how it works on land. That's how it works in shallow water. Predator and prey, competition for resources, adaptation over generations. But here's where it gets strange. In 2016, a research team deployed a deep-sea submersible to 3,000 meters below the surface. That's 2 miles down.
A place where the pressure is 300 times what you're experiencing right now. They were expecting to find almost nothing, a barren wasteland, maybe a few adapted bacteria, some scattered survivors clinging to existence. Instead, they found an explosion of life. Not just life, thriving life, bizarre life. And here's the anomaly that doesn't make sense. These creatures weren't just surviving in one of the harshest environments on Earth. They had no competition. On land, evolution is driven by competition. Fight for food, fight for mates,
Fight for territory. But down here, there's nothing to compete with. 60% of the planet's surface, and yet it's one of the most isolated places in existence. No sunlight means no plants. No plants means no herbivores. No herbivores means the entire food chain shouldn't exist. And yet, it does. So if these creatures aren't evolving to compete, what are they evolving for? To understand why deep-sea creatures look like nightmares, you have to understand time. Not human time, not even geological time. Evolutionary time in isolation. The deep sea has been dark for hundreds of millions of years. That's not an exaggeration. Sunlight stopped penetrating below 1,000 meters when the oceans formed. For 400 million years, the creatures down there have been evolving in complete darkness. No day-night cycle, no seasons, no changes in temperature, just endless, unchanging dark. This creates something scientists call extreme environmental stability, and stability does something terrifying to evolution. It slows it down. A Greenland shark, one of the deep sea's apex predators, can live for 400 years. 400 years. Some were alive when Shakespeare was writing plays. They don't reach sexual maturity until they're 150 years old. That means evolution happens at a glacial pace. But here's the twist. When evolution happens that slowly, every adaptation becomes permanent, extreme, irreversible. These creatures aren't adapted to the deep sea. They're locked into it. They can't leave. They can't change. They're evolutionary dead ends that have been perfecting the same survival strategy for millions of years. And that strategy? Become a monster. But there's something even stranger happening down there. In 2021, scientists lowered hydrophones, underwater microphones, to the abyssal plains 4,000 meters down. They were listening for whale songs, tectonic activity, the usual stuff. What they heard instead were sounds they couldn't identify.
Low-frequency pulses, rhythmic patterns, clicks that seemed to respond to each other across miles of ocean. Some lasted for hours. The scientists checked their equipment, ran diagnostics. Everything was working perfectly. The sounds were real, but they had no idea what was making them. And here's what should unsettle you. Those sounds are still being recorded, right now. We still don't know what they are. The deep sea isn't just visually alien, it's acoustically alien. There are conversations happening down there, movements, behaviors, and we are not part of them. We can't even understand them.
Now let's talk about the light. You've probably seen footage of deep-sea creatures that glow. It looks magical, beautiful even. It's not. Bioluminescence in the deep sea is a weapon. See, when there's no sunlight and you're living in a place where food appears maybe once a month, you have two options. Option 1, wait in the dark and hope something edible drifts past. Option 2, make yourself bait. The anglerfish is the famous example. That glowing lure, it's a modified spine filled with bioluminescent bacteria. It looks like food. It looks like light. It looks like safety. It's a lie. But here's what's truly disturbing. Almost everything down there lies. The stoplight loosejaw produces red light, which nothing else down there can see, so it can hunt invisibly. The vampire squid can eject glowing mucus as a decoy while it escapes. And some species use bioluminescence to communicate, but we don't know what they're saying. In 2019, researchers recorded a deep-sea squid flashing patterns that look like Morse code. Precise, deliberate, repeating. To this day, no one knows what it means. We don't have the code book. Imagine that, an entire language spoken in light in the deepest, darkest place on Earth, and we're deaf to it. Gets worse. Some creatures use bioluminescence for mimicry. They impersonate other species. The cookie-cutter shark has photophores on its belly that make it look like a smaller fish from below. Predators swim up to eat it, and then the cookie-cutter attacks. It latches on with circular, razor-sharp teeth and tears out a perfect chunk of flesh. It's a reverse ambush. The prey becomes the predator, and the light was the trap. Energy scarcity and opportunistic evolution. Let's address the obvious question. Why do they look like that? Giant teeth, huge mouths, distended stomachs, transparent heads, detachable jaws. It's not random, it's hyperlogical. Remember, food in the deep sea is catastrophically scarce. A single whale carcass sinking from the surface can sustain an entire ecosystem for 2 years. 2 years. One body. So when you encounter food, which might happen once a month if you're lucky, you have to be able to eat anything. The black swallower can eat fish twice its own size. Its stomach stretches to absurd proportions. The gulper eel is mostly mouth. Its body is basically a biological net with a stomach attached. Its teeth so large they don't fit in its mouth. It has sockets in its skull to house them when it closes its jaws. This isn't mutation, this is optimization. When food is that scarce, you can't be picky. You have to eat whatever appears, whenever it appears. And you have to store it, because you don't know when you'll eat again. So yes, they look like monsters, but from an evolutionary perspective, they look perfect. But here's the truly disturbing part. Some of these creatures have evolved to eat things that aren't even food. The deep-sea dragonfish has been found with plastic in its stomach, microfibers, debris, not because it's starving, because in the deep sea you test everything. You bite it, you swallow it, you see if your stomach acid can break it down, because the alternative is waiting, and waiting means dying. Extreme pressure physics. Now let's talk about the pressure, because this is where it gets truly alien. At 3,000 meters deep, the pressure is 300 atmospheres. That's 4,400 pounds per square inch. Your lungs would collapse instantly. Your eardrums would rupture. Any air spaces in your body would be crushed. You would die before you felt pain. So how do they survive? They don't have air. Most fish have a swim bladder, an air-filled organ that controls buoyancy. Deep-sea fish don't have them. They'd explode. Instead, their bodies are filled with water and gel, incompressible. The blobfish, that infamous ugliest animal, doesn't actually look like that.
That's what it looks like when you bring it to the surface and the pressure drops. At 3,000 meters down, it looks normal because its body is designed for pressure. But here's the thing that should terrify you. These creatures feel nothing. The pressure that would kill you instantly, to them it's normal. It's home. They've evolved in an environment so extreme that their entire biology is different. Their proteins are different. Their cell membranes are different. Their enzymes work at pressures that would destroy ours. A Mariana snailfish was found at 8,000 meters. That's 5 miles down. The pressure there is 16,000 pounds per square inch, and it was just swimming around, casually, like it was nothing. Because to that fish, it was nothing. That's not adaptation. That's a different form of life. And here's what scientists discovered that changed everything. When they brought deep-sea creatures to the surface for study, most of them died instantly. Not from the pressure change, from the lack of pressure. Their cells need that crushing force to function. Without it, their proteins unfold, their membranes collapse. They essentially melt from the inside out, which means something terrifying. They can never leave. They're prisoners of the abyss, born there, living there, dying there, locked into an environment so extreme that escape means death.
Here it is, the truth we've been building toward. The deep sea isn't terrifying because it's alien. It's terrifying because it's Earth. These creatures didn't come from another planet. They evolved here, on the same world as you, under the same laws of physics, following the same principles of natural selection. And here's the revelation that keeps marine biologists awake at night. Most of the deep sea is alive, not empty. For decades, we thought the abyss was a barren desert, a dead zone, the largest wasteland on Earth. But every time we send a submersible down, we find more life, weirder life, thriving life. We've discovered more new species in the deep ocean in the last 20 years than in the previous century. And the deeper we go, the stranger they become. But here's the part that should make your blood run cold. Some of these creatures are effectively immortal. The Greenland shark, 400 plus years. Some tube worms at hydrothermal vents, 250 years. Glass sponges, 15,000 years. 15,000. They don't age the way we understand aging. Their cells don't deteriorate. They just keep going until something kills them. And when they finally do die, death sinks. Everything that dies on the surface eventually falls to the abyss. Whales, fish, seabirds, squid, everything. And down there, creatures that haven't eaten in months are waiting. Within hours of a whale carcass hitting the ocean floor, it's swarmed by thousands of organisms. Hagfish that tie themselves in knots to burrow inside and eat from within. Sharks that navigate by electric fields to find the dead. Crabs that strip flesh in coordinated swarms. Bone-eating zombie worms that dissolve skeletal remains with acid. The deep sea doesn't waste anything because it can't afford to. Death doesn't end in the abyss. It transforms. It becomes energy, sustenance, life. And this cycle has been happening for hundreds of millions of years, long before humans, long before mammals, long before anything walked on land. The abyss has been feeding on death since complex life began. So what does this mean? We spend our lives on the surface of a planet that is 71% ocean,
And most of that ocean is deep. Beneath every boat, every beach, every swimming pool, there is a world we barely understand. A world that has been evolving longer than trees have existed on land. A world where the rules of biology, physics, and death itself work differently. We've explored less than 5% of the ocean floor, which means 95% is unknown. And every time we go down there, we find something that shouldn't exist, something that rewrites what we thought was possible. The deep sea isn't just the largest ecosystem on Earth, it's the largest mystery on Earth, right beneath our feet, waiting, full of life that evolved in isolation for hundreds of millions of years, life that doesn't compete, doesn't age, doesn't die easily. Life that communicates in languages of light and sound we cannot understand. And here's the final truth. The deep sea isn't done evolving. It's still changing, still adapting, still creating new forms of life in the darkness. And we'll never see most of it. Because the moment we try to bring it to our world, it dies. Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved. Some places aren't meant to be explored. Some things are meant to stay in the abyss.